The football world just witnessed something absolutely unbelievable. And if you missed it, you're about to understand why everyone, from analysts to former players to die-hard fans, is suddenly talking about one name louder than ever before: Shedeur Sanders. What happened on that field wasn't just a debut. It wasn't just a rookie trying to survive his first real taste of NFL pressure. It was something far bigger, far more explosive, and honestly, something almost nobody saw coming. From the very moment Sanders stepped onto the field, there was this strange mix of expectation and doubt swirling around him. You could feel it. Some people were ready to crown him the next big thing. Others were sharpening their criticism before the first snap even happened. And that's exactly what makes what unfolded next so incredible. Because instead of letting the moment swallow him, instead of folding under the weight of all that noise, Shedeur stepped into the spotlight like he had been waiting for this exact moment his entire life. But here's the thing most people don't realize. This moment didn't come out of nowhere. Shedeur Sanders has been living under one of the brightest spotlights in football for years. Every move he made, every throw he attempted, every mistake he learned from, people were watching, commenting, picking apart. He didn't get the luxury of developing quietly behind the scenes. No, he grew in the open. He matured in public. And he learned the hard way what it means to face pressure long before he ever touched an NFL field. So when he jogged onto that field for his debut, he wasn't carrying fear. He wasn't carrying nerves. He was carrying something far more dangerous: preparedness. The kind of preparation that comes from studying relentlessly, adjusting constantly, and refusing to let outside voices define your trajectory. And the moment that football left his hands for the very first time, everything shifted. You could almost feel the stadium wake up. The crowd leaned in. The sideline buzzed. Even the opposing defense, who definitely expected a rookie they could rattle, seemed to hesitate for just a second. Because this wasn't a kid trying to dip his toes into NFL waters. This was a quarterback stepping in like he belonged there. Every drop back, every read, every call in the action in the face of pressure built a new narrative right in front of our eyes. A narrative no one was prepared for. By the end of the night, the conversation surrounding Shedeur Sanders had changed completely. Not because people wanted to hype him up, not because of some flashy headline, but because of what he showed in real time: confidence, control, precision, and a debut that felt less like a beginning and more like an announcement. This wasn't just an introduction. This was a message. And trust me, everyone heard it. Before Shedeur Sanders even took a single step onto the NFL field, the air around him was already electric. But it wasn't the kind of excitement you see with every rookie quarterback. This was different. This was heavier. This was the type of pressure that builds over years. Pressure shaped by expectations, comparisons, and non-stop scrutiny that followed him long before the draft. For months leading up to his debut, the conversation around Shedeur never really settled. Analysts went back and forth, breaking down his college tape frame by frame, trying to figure out whether his success was a byproduct of system, talent, or pure hype. Some were convinced he had the tools to shock the league, while others labeled him as a player who would struggle the moment he faced NFL speed. And with every new headline, every talk show segment, every social media debate, that pressure only grew louder. But what most people failed to understand was that Shedeur wasn't stepping into unfamiliar territory. He had been navigating this kind of noise for years. From the day he gained national attention, everything he did came with instant reaction. Instead of drowning in it, he adapted. Every doubt sharpened him. Every criticism forced him to refine something. Every spotlight moment taught him how to stay composed when everyone else was waiting for him to slip. By the time his debut finally arrived, Shedeur didn't look like someone entering the storm. He looked like someone who had learned to live in it. The nerves people expected him to show? They weren't there. The hesitation rookies usually carry, nowhere to be seen. What he carried instead was a calmness that almost felt out of place for a first-time NFL starter. And as he walked onto that field, there was this feeling, subtle but impossible to ignore, that he wasn't just arriving for a debut. He was arriving to change a conversation, to rewrite a narrative, to show that the pressure people thought would break him had actually been shaping him into something far more dangerous. A quarterback who knew exactly why he belonged there. Because for Shedeur Sanders, the buildup wasn't his obstacle. It was his preparation. From the moment the ball was snapped for the very first time, it became obvious that Shedeur Sanders wasn't treating this debut like a warm-up. There was no slow settling in, no cautious testing of the waters, no rookie hesitation. Instead, he stepped into the pocket with a presence that immediately raised eyebrows, not just from fans, but from players lining up against him. It was the kind of poise you usually only see from quarterbacks who've spent years reading defenses at NFL speed, not someone stepping onto a professional field for the first time. What really set the tone early was his command. He didn't just run the plays, he owned them. His footwork looked polished. His eyes moved through progressions with purpose. And his timing, something rookies often struggle with, was surprisingly sharp. When the pocket tightened, he didn't flinch. He kept his shoulders square, trusted his reads, and delivered throws with a confidence that didn't match the rookie debut label everyone kept trying to attach to him. And then came the moment that made the stadium react. A perfectly timed strike between two defenders, precise, fearless, and thrown with the kind of touch that made even the commentators pause. It wasn't luck, it wasn't desperation. It was an NFL-level throw delivered by someone who many thought wasn't ready for this stage. As the game continued, something else became clear. Shedeur's rhythm wasn't fading. Drive after drive, he looked more comfortable, more controlled, more in sync with the speed of the game. His decision-making stayed clean. He didn't force reckless passes into traffic. He didn't collapse under pressure or try to play hero ball. Instead, he played like someone who understood exactly what his job was and how to execute it at a high level. But the most impressive part wasn't a single throw or highlight. It was his composure. When defenders closed in, he stayed calm. When receivers needed adjustments, he communicated. When the defense shifted coverage right before the snap, he recognized it and reacted like someone who had studied that exact look 1,000 times. Even when things didn't go perfectly, a missed block, a drop pass, a blown assignment, his demeanor didn't change. That level of emotional control is rare for a rookie, and it quietly told everyone watching that he wasn't just playing in this game, he was learning it in real time. By the time the final quarter rolled around, it didn't feel like a debut anymore. It felt like the unveiling of a quarterback who had been preparing for this moment far longer than anyone realized. Fans could sense it. Coaches recognized it. Even defenders acknowledged it. Shedeur Sanders wasn't surviving the game. He was competing, adjusting, and proving he belonged. And with every completed pass, every smart decision, every moment of composure under pressure, one thing became harder and harder to deny. Shedeur Sanders didn't just show up. He showed he's ready for far more than anyone expected. The moment the final whistle sounded, everything around Shedeur Sanders shifted. It wasn't gradual. It wasn't subtle. It was immediate. Like someone had flipped a switch and the entire football world suddenly saw him through a completely different lens. What had started as a debut filled with doubt and split opinions turned into one of the most talked about performances of the week. And the reactions came pouring in faster than anyone expected. On the sideline, you could feel the energy change. Teammates who had been unsure of what to expect from a rookie now walked up to him with a different kind of respect. The kind that only comes when a player proves he's more than hype. Veteran receivers nodded at him with approval. Offensive linemen clapped him on the back like they just watched something special. Even coaches, usually stone-faced and reserved after a long game, couldn't hide slight smirks when talking about his composure. But it wasn't just the team, it was the league. Analysts who spent the preseason questioning whether Shedeur was ready suddenly shifted their tone. Instead of asking if he could handle the pressure, they were debating how high his ceiling might actually be. Sports talk shows lit up with clips of his throws. Former quarterbacks broke down his mechanics frame by frame. Studio hosts who once doubted him started phrases with, "I might have been wrong about this kid." And if you know anything about NFL media, you know how rare that is. Then came the fan reaction, and that might have been the loudest of all. Social media erupted within minutes. Hashtags trended. Highlight compilations circulated everywhere. People who had barely watched the game were suddenly claiming they knew he was special all along. Fans of rival teams, who normally wouldn't give credit to any rookie outside their own roster, admitted he looked far more polished than expected. But the most interesting shift? The conversation stopped being about his debut and started being about his future. Instead of debating whether he belonged, people were asking how far he could go. Instead of talking about his weaknesses, they were analyzing his potential trajectory. Instead of comparing him to other rookies, they were comparing him to established starters. This wasn't the reaction of a league impressed by a lucky performance. This was the reaction of a league realizing it might be witnessing the rise of something bigger than one good game. And through all the chaos, through every headline, every debate, every viral clip, Shedeur remained calm. No victory laps, no loud statements, just the same composed, focused demeanor he carried into the game. Almost as if he knew this was just the beginning. Because for Shedeur Sanders, the aftermath wasn't the celebration, it was the confirmation, a signal that he had arrived, and that the NFL better be ready for what comes next. When the dust finally settled and the stadium lights dimmed, one thing became absolutely undeniable. Shedeur Sanders didn't just complete an NFL debut, he changed the entire narrative surrounding him in a single night. What people expected to be a cautious first step or a shaky introduction turned into something far more compelling. It became a reminder of why talent, preparation, and mental resilience matter more than anyone's predictions. For months leading into this moment, the conversation around Shedeur was filled with doubt. Critics questioned his transition. Analysts dissected every college throw, and fans debated whether he had the it factor to survive in the league. But after watching him navigate pressure, command drives, and maintain control in the face of real NFL chaos, the question is no longer whether he belongs. The real question, the one everyone is now asking, is how far he can actually go, because the traits he displayed in his debut aren't the kind you see in a one-off performance. They're the kind that hint at long-term potential, the kind that suggest a player built not just for moments, but for seasons. His poise wasn't accidental. His accuracy wasn't luck. His decision-making wasn't a fluke. These were the habits of a quarterback who has put in the unseen hours, absorbed the criticism, and turned every bit of pressure into fuel. And that's what makes this so fascinating. Most rookies spend their first game trying to avoid mistakes. Shedeur spent his trying to take control. Most rookies shrink when the spotlight hits. He stepped deeper into it. Most rookies step deeper into it. Look overwhelmed by the pace. He adjusted to it faster than anyone expected. That alone is enough to turn heads, but it's the way he carried himself afterward that truly set him apart. No bragging, no theatrics, Just calm confidence, quiet discipline, and a focus that tells you he's already preparing for whatever comes next. The NFL moves fast, and moments like these rarely go unnoticed. Coaches study them, opponents remember them, fans latch onto them. And for Shedeur Sanders, this debut doesn't feel like a peak or a highlight. It feels like the beginning of something that's still unfolding, something that might reshape not just his career, but the expectations people place on him moving forward. Because if this was just step one, then the league needs to prepare for the rest of the game. Journey. His story isn't finished. It isn't even close. In fact, it feels like we've only seen the opening chapter. And if this opening chapter tells us anything, it's that Shedeur Sanders hasn't just arrived in the NFL. He's here to make sure nobody forgets his name.